This is the Austen book bag. It's a small to medium sized bag, and it's made to look like a book on the outside. It has this front cover and spine, which you can customize to look like a book. You can also customize the back if you'd like. It has a shoulder strap, which is adjustable, so you can make it longer or shorter. And then to open the bag, it has a magnet closure right here, and the bag is a placket closure, and it is large enough to fit a book in there. There's also a small pocket right here. And it is carried sideways like this. With the Austen bag, you want to make sure that the materials that you're using are able to be sewn by your machine. And this is going to depend on what kind of machine you have. If you have a domestic or an industrial machine, industrial machines can pretty much sew anything. They can go over a lot of thick seams, so you can do vinyl all over and you can do Decaville heavy. It's not really going to be a problem. If you have an industrial, you want to pay attention to the needle that you're using, the thread, and even the foot, because all of these things, as well as your materials, is going to determine how your bag turns out. I did make a materials cheat sheet for the Austen Mini, and that will also be good for this bag. So the first step is to just gather your materials, and I have my hardware all in here, and I've got my zipper tape here also. For straps, you can use webbing, but I'm going to be using vinyl, so I'm going to sew my own straps. I'm going to do regular connectors, so I just have 2 of the strap connectors. If you're going to do a hidden connector, you're going to need the facing for them. Then I have my front and back panels, and you can go ahead and decorate this now, but I'm going to wait until I put it together to decorate it. And then the spine. Then we have zipper plackets, and then the top, the middle, and the bottom lining. These are all vinyl, but what I'm going to do is stabilize it after I've sewn them all together. So I have my Decaville heavy here, and I wrote down that this is for the full lining, just to make sure that I know what this one's for. The zipper pocket and the overlay, I haven't cut out the inside part of it yet. And then this one is the exterior of the bag, the interior bottom, and then the interior top. I didn't stabilize the bag exterior yet. What you want to do with that one is, because we're doing boxed corners at the bottom, you want to make sure that the stabilizer isn't part of the seam. So I'm going to cut out the boxed corners for the exterior, for the bag exterior, and then I'm going to cut out the corners for the stabilizer, and then I'll fuse it. You're going to need your regular notions, scissors, clips, rotary cutters, rulers, stuff like that. And this one is a spray adhesive. It's not part of the list for your notions, but I started using it for the Austen Mini, and I'm going to use it for this bag as well, because I haven't fully decided yet, but I think I'm going to do edge coat for this one, so I will have raw edges on there, and then the spray adhesive will be really nice to make sure that everything is flat. You can also use the spray adhesive if you're going to turn out. You just have to spray inside the bag after you've turned out. This pattern has 3 options for binding. There's the raw edges, where you just sew wrong sides together, and then you've got raw edges all around, and then you can choose to edge coat if you like, or just leave it as it is. The second option is to turn it right side out. So first you have to sew both pieces right sides together, and then turn it right side out and close the gap. And then the third option is to do a binding method, and the binding is included in the pattern. There are a lot of differences with those 3 methods. It really just depends on your preference and what your machine can handle. When you are binding, I feel that it's a little bit more difficult to make sure that the binding is straight on both sides, the interior and exterior. So that's a difficult part for turning out. You have to make sure that you're able to actually turn out your bag. So if you have a lot of stiff materials, if you use Decaville heavy vinyls, stuff like that, you're going to have a difficult time turning out your bag. I like doing raw edges the best because I feel that that is the easiest. All you have to do is sew wrong sides together and then edge coat the outside if you want to. If you're using directional fabrics, you want to make sure that your fabric is cut in the way that you want them to look on the bag. So for example, the exterior front and back are pretty self-explanatory. You want them to go up and down with the direction of your fabric. For the bag exterior, which is this one, I have it cut out so that if you are using a directional fabric, your fabric is going to go up and down like this because the opening is going to be up here. But when you have your bag, it's going to be sideways when you sew all your bag together, which doesn't really matter when you are opening the bag, but perhaps if you were looking from the outside of your bag when your bag is closed up, you would see that this part of the bag is sideways. So depending on how you want it to look, either from inside the bag when you open it or from the outside when you're looking at the exterior of the bag, you will want to consider how you cut this exterior part of the fabric. This bag doesn't have a normal construction method because it's meant to look like a book, so the way you put it together is just a little bit different, and you will learn a new technique, but for the most part it's fairly simple after you've figured out how it actually goes together. I believe the hardest part of this bag is just knowing your materials, using the right materials, and then being able to sew those materials together. For the exterior pieces, we've got our spine, our front and back panels. So first we're going to sew the spine to the front panel or back panel. It doesn't matter which one, it only matters if you've already designed your front and back panels. So in this case, you want to make sure that you're putting them in the right places. What I did for the spine is that I went ahead and drew my seam allowance. That way I have my seam allowance correct, because this is very important for this pattern. If you're off even just a little bit, your bag could turn out wonky. So I went ahead and did that. And you can also use one of these magnet things, and that will make sure that you've got your seam allowance correct. For this one, whenever I do just a regular stitch with the seams, I do a length of 4 for my stitches. And then do the same for the other exterior piece, front or back. Again, if you have decorations on this, you want to make sure that you've got it not only sewn to the spine the correct way, but you've also got the top where it needs to be and the bottom where it needs to be, so that nothing is upside down. Here's what it looks like now, and then we just have to top stitch. When we top stitch, our stitches will be on the spine side. So from the back, we're going to push the seams in towards the spine, towards the middle of the spine. If you are using cotton fabrics, you can go ahead and iron this. Otherwise, you can just press it down. And then going on the machine, make sure that your needle is on the spine side and that your the underside of the seams are going that way. So I'm just going to push them all towards the spine. And I'm increasing my stitch length to 5. again, pushing my seam towards the spine, and then my needle is on the spine side, moving all the seams towards the middle of the spine again. And then make sure that you're pulling this apart. That is it for the exterior. If you are adding your strap connectors to the back of the bag, which would be like back here, you can go ahead and do that now. The one thing that I like about putting the connectors to the back of the bag is that you won't be seeing it on the side, and then it will really look like a book because there's not going to be any straps or connectors on this side where the pages are. The bad thing about that is when you have the connectors back here and you're holding up the bag by the straps, it's going to lean forward as you're holding the straps up. So it's really a matter of preference which one you like. For this one, I'm going to be doing the connectors on the pages part of the bag. So this one is finished for now. We're going to just put this to the side. Now we're going to do the plackets. So you need your 2 plackets, your long zipper tape, and your 5-inch zipper pull. And the first thing we're going to do is take one end of the zipper tape and pull it apart, and then turn it at a 90-degree angle so it looks like this, and you're just going to tack it down. You can either staple or sew this together, or you can use double-sided tape. Do the same for the other side. Make sure it's straight. And then we're going to put double-sided tape on both sides, and you're just going to put it on the long edges. Start from the head of the zipper tape and then go down, and then you want to stop at 2.5 inch from the tail end. Do the same for the other side. Then we're going to take one of our zipper plackets and just pre-fold the end over here by about 1/4 inch. You can go ahead and use double-sided tape for this too. Take one side of your zipper tape and remove the backing from the double-sided tape, and then place it on the edge against the one side of the placket, and you want the edge of the placket here to stop on the end of where you stopped with your zipper tape, or with your double-sided tape. And then flip this over, line up all the edges, and then we're going to sew at 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I also went ahead and changed my thread color and also lowered my stitch length to the regular length that it usually is, which is a 4. Now we're going to turn this right side out. And here we've got the exterior of the placket. And then what you can do now is top stitch this, or you can top stitch it all at the end. And And then if you want, you can give this a good press, or you can just pull your fabrics away from the zipper tape and clip them. And then you want to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on the fabric side. And you want to go all the way around down the zipper down here, making sure to catch both of these short ends, and then you can go ahead and baste this side as well, and then over here at the top. One of the things that you can do so that your back stitches don't show up right here is to start on the raw edges, because that way it's not going to show up in your final bag because the raw edges will get sewn in. So we're going to do that here. When I'm basting, I'm going to go at 1/4 inch seam allowance for just the basting, because that will not show up. And then go in at 1/8 of an inch when you get to the zipper part. Make sure to fold. And then another 1/8 of an inch down this edge. It got stuck. There it goes. And then I'm going to back stitch on the raw edge over here. Okay, just kidding about the zipper pull. You won't need it yet. So we're going to go ahead and separate. Now we're going to sew the lining of the bag. For this, we're going to need our top placket, and that's the one that's got the head on the left and the tail on the right. And then the top lining, middle lining, and bottom lining. And make sure that you have this facing the correct way. This one looks like it's a square, but it's not. There is a slight difference, so you want to make sure that this is turned the correct way. And how I did that was I just wrote T for top. We're going to start with the top and middle lining, and we're going to place it right sides together and then sew it at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I've got my magnet down here for the 3/8 inch seam allowance, lining up the edges over here. We're going to open this up, and we're going to make sure that the seam is towards the middle lining. So it's just going to be like this. And then we're going to top stitch on the middle lining. Now we're going to take our top zipper placket, place it right sides together with the middle part of the lining, like this, and then we just want to have it centered, which is 1.5 inch from both sides. So right here. And then you can go ahead and sew this down, or you can sew all of this together. So we're going to place this up here. So we've got this like that, and just place it right sides together. So I'm going to go ahead and just do both at the same time, and just make sure that they don't shift as I'm sewing. And then we're going to sew this at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure my stitch length is back to the regular length. Okay, now we're going to open this up and we're going to press the seam over here towards the bottom side. So I'm just going to leave it like that and then turn this over, and the seam is on this side, and then that's where you're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Turn up my stitch length. And make sure you're pulling so that your seams aren't puffy. Here's what the lining looks like now in full, top, middle, and bottom, and then our top placket installed. Everything is top stitched, and then on the back I went ahead and did a full lining or a full stabilizer. You can just do a stabilizer for just this middle and bottom part, and then that will be good enough for the bag so that it doesn't get bunched up over here. But I do like the bag to be a little bit more stiff, so I did put the stabilizer for the whole lining. So now what we're going to do is add the pocket, the zipper pocket that goes in here, and then after that we're going to make the bag part. To make the pocket, we're going to need our shorter zipper tape, a zipper pull, the zipper pocket, and then the overlay will go after. I went ahead and added some double-sided tape across the top of the right side of the zipper pocket, and then just peel off the backing and place the tape right side up and wrong side against the right side of the zipper pocket. Line up the edges at the top, and then we're going to sew this down. And then turn this around to the bottom side, and we're going to do the same thing with the double-sided tape. Just place some across the top. Peel off the backing, and then take this bottom edge of the zipper tape and just place it right across. And you want to make sure that your pocket is even here and here on the sides, so then it will look like this. And then we're going to sew across again at 3/16 of an inch seam allowance. And here's what that looks like. And then this one is the zipper overlay, and I just did it manually, so that's why I don't have the round corners, but if you have a pattern then your corners will be rounded. But here's what it looks like on the back. I just did a little zipper template that I have to draw out this rectangle to cut out for the window, but the instructions on how to do this, if you don't know how to do it already, is in the PDF file. It's basically a 6-inch wide by half-inch height rectangle, and then you just make sure it's centered right here in the middle. Here's what my zipper overlay looks like now after I've cut away that rectangle piece. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and take some double-sided tape again and lay it across the middle of this long edge. And then another one down this other long edge. And then to place it on the lining part, you want to measure 1/2 inch from the bottom and placket seam. So that's this seam right here. You want to take your ruler and then measure 1/2 inch from right there. Let me go ahead and get this lined up. And then the edges of the overlay are just going to match the edges of the placket right here. And then I'm going to press this down so that the tape on the back sticks. And then I'm going to sew around this overlay on the outside edge of it at 1/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. I moved my light closer so you could see it because it's the same color, but I'm going to increase my stitch length again to 5 because this is top stitching, and then instead of back stitching, I'm just going to leave long threads and I'm just going to start sewing. I want to make sure that I stop at the very corner, and then with my needle down, lift the foot up and then turn this corner. And then place my needle down, turn this corner. Just checking to make sure I wasn't too close. And then I just want to make sure that I end where I started. And then take this out. And then make sure I have long threads. And here is what it looks like. I have these long threads here, so what I'm going to do is go around to the back and then pull the threads back from the front. So I'm just going to pull them back here. And then I'm going to tie them. Now we want to cut out this little piece of the window, so we're going to just take some scissors, poke a hole right through, and then I'm just going to cut straight across. And then make sure that you're not cutting any part of your overlay. And then turn it to the back. And then cut out a little rectangle piece from the back. Make sure you're not cutting your overlay when you do this. Here's what it looks like from the front. And then on the back, I went ahead and added my zipper pull to the zipper pocket. You can wait until later to do this before you close off the entire pocket if you have issues with making sure that the pocket is straight or that the zipper is straight, but you can go ahead and do it now like I did. And then I'm just going to place some more double-sided tape right across the top of the zipper tape. Do it again for the other side. And then we can go ahead and peel these off. And then we take the zipper pocket and place it with the zipper teeth peeking out through this window. So you just want to make sure that it's straight. And I'm just going to lightly place this on there so it stays a little bit, but I'm not going to press it down because I want to make sure that everything is lined up on this side. So I'm just going to press down this part of the zipper pocket to make sure that the zipper tape is completely flat. Then when you have it centered like you want, like this, we're going to make sure that this pocket is folded upwards. So it looks like this. And then we're going to sew along the bottom part first so that we don't forget to flip this up, and that way we're not closing the pocket. I'm going to sew along the bottom part first, and again you want to start on the corner and leave a long tail. And then this is just 1/8 inch from the inner edge. Then I'm going to go ahead and move my zipper back. And take this off. And then what I want to do is fold down this pocket downwards. And then we've got long tails still, so we're going to start at either of these ends. I'm going to place my needle exactly where I ended. Stop at the corner and turn it. I'm going to go ahead and have it pull out of the way. And then we're going to turn to the back and pull back all of those long tails and tie them off. Here's what this looks like now, and then what we're going to do is sew down this pocket, but we're not going to sew it to the lining. We're just going to sew the pocket itself on this right side and left side where the openings are. And now we've got a pocket. Now we are on to the bag exterior, and I'm just using water-resistant canvas. This is the front side of it, so I'm going to turn over to the wrong side. And on these bottom corners, I'm going to measure out and cut 3 1/4 inch from both of these sides here and here, and that's going to be my box corners. I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. And then do the same for this side. And then I'm going to do the same thing to my stabilizer. If you don't have a stabilizer, then obviously you can skip this part. Now I'm going to fuse this to the wrong side of the fabric. So this is Pro Fuse fusible non-woven stabilizer, or on their site it says interfacing. So I'm just going to fuse it like this. I stabilized the exterior of the bag and I let it sit for 30 minutes to make sure that the glue is completely set. And now I'm going to place my magnet. So to do that, I'm going to find the center of the bag. So let's see here. Here's the middle of it. Right here. And then I want my magnet to be towards the bottom instead of towards the middle. So if you want your bag, or you want your magnet to be towards the middle, you're going to measure 4 inches down from the top. But if you want it towards the bottom, you're going to measure 1.5 inch from this bottom edge here. So I've got 1.5 inch here. And again, I want it centered, so it's going to be right here. Then you're going to get your magnets, and you're just going to need one of them. So this one has the thing poking out in the middle, and it's thinner, so I want to save this one for the flap. And this is the one that I'm going to use. It's heavier and thicker. And then you take your washer, you line it up with that center dot that you made, and then draw the 2 lines for where the prongs are going to go. And then to cut these lines, I usually just use my seam ripper. By the way, if you didn't stabilize this, you want to add just a little bit of Decavil Heavy back here where your magnet is going to be. Now I'm going to take my magnet and then take the washer, then fold the prongs over. You can do it inwards or outwards. And then I just like to get some duct tape and place it on the back here. That way the prongs don't scratch against the lining and damage it over time. And now we're going to make the strap connectors. So we're just going to move this over up here. And I've got my strap connectors here. This is the front and this is the wrong side. So I'm going to mark the center for the wrong side, and since this is 2 inches, the center of it is just 1 inch all the way down. And then do the same for the other. Then we're going to take off the backing. And then we're going to fold in the long edges towards the middle. And now both pieces should be 1 inch. Now we're going to add the connectors to the bag exterior. I was just going to do regular connectors, but I'm going to actually do the hidden connectors. So I did cut out the facings that you need for it. And then I've got my D-rings here. So first what I'm going to do is measure 1.5 inch down from the top, and then 1.25 from the left side. And then we just want to draw a line that's about 1 inch. And that's going to be where the connectors is going to be. So on the right side, do the same thing, 1.5 inch and 1.25 from the right. And you can barely see this probably on camera. So I drew those lines, and then what I'm going to do is cut those lines that I just drew. I've just got my ruler here to make sure that I have it correct and that I'm going to cut it in the right spot. I know it's difficult to see because my fabric is black. And then over here, the same thing. And then I'm going to get my scissors and just make sure I cut all the way through to 1 inch. That way my strap connectors will fit. On my bag exterior, I'm going to find those lines that I just cut. Those are going to be for the connectors. So I've got my facing here, and I'm going to turn it to the wrong side, and this is the right side of the bag exterior. I'm going to just slip this in through that cut that I made. And again, this is wrong side, right side. And then what I'm going to do is just pull it in a little bit and then sew 1/8 of an inch from this slit opening. I just turned my light over here so you can see it a little bit better, but when I start, I'm going to make sure that I'm not past the facing. I just want to, oops, okay, just want to sew inside it. Here's what it looks like, and then here's the back. And then I'm just going to pull this through to the back, so just push it in there, take it out, and then here's what that looks like. Then I'm going to take one of my strap connectors and place it with the wrong side, facing up. So that's just going to slide in there. Just like that. So this is wrong side, this is right side, and then I'm going to sew across at 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to take one of my D-rings and place it through here, and then slide it through the opening and towards the back and pull this through. And here's what it looks like. And then what you can do is do a line of stitches across this, but I don't like the way that looks, so what I'm going to do is do a rivet here. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and do this other side for the connector. This is the bag exterior, and I have it finished with the magnet, the strap connectors, and then I added rivets down here. And I'm just going to take this and put it up here. And then this is the bag bottom interior. And then now we have to box the corners here, and it's just going to be the same way that we did these two up here for the bag exterior. So we're just going to go on the bottom and measure 3 1/4 inch. The same for the other side. And then we're going to place our placket onto this bottom part of the interior. And then I've got the top part of my interior here. I'm just going to place it to the side a little bit. First, we're going to place the placket right side up. So this is the right side up, and this is the right side of the fabric. We're going to place it centered, which is 4.5 inches from the left and right sides. Just like that. And then take the top part of the lining and place it with the right side down, so right sides together with this bottom part. Line up the edges and then clip into place. If you want to baste the placket first, you can, or you can just sew it all together at once. I'm going to sew across the top at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and then top stitch at 1/8 inch. And then for the top stitching, you want to top stitch on this side of the fabric, so the seam will be going that way. Now we're going to complete these box corners here, and I'm going to start with the exterior. I'm just going to place these two edges together and then clip here and here. And then I'm going to do the same for this other side. So now we have both of these edges clipped. And I'm going to do the same for the interior. And then I'm going to sew all of these at 3/8 of an inch. Here's the interior, and then here's the exterior. And then we are going to place these two pieces right sides together. So here's the right side of this. Place it right in here. And then I'm going to clip all the way around. When you get to these corners over here, you want to open up these seams to reduce the bulk, and then clip right there. Now we're going to sew along this edge here, and we're going to leave this part unsewn. And this is going to be at 3/8 inch seam allowance. Here's what it looks like all sewn together, and then we're just going to open this up and turn it right side out. So here's the bag, here's what it looks like. This is the exterior and this is the interior, and now what we're going to do is understitch the interior or the lining of this bag. And this is usually not done with bags, it's usually a clothing thing that you do. So when you understitch, you're just putting the seams towards the lining side and then top stitching all around, and this just makes it a little bit cleaner, and it'll be easier to do the next steps after this if we understitch it. If you can't understitch it, because a lot of machines probably won't be able to do this, especially if your bag is a little bit heavier, you've used like vinyl or Decaville heavy or even Decaville light, it might be a little bit difficult to understitch, so you can skip this part. But if you're able to understitch, then I definitely recommend it, because it will make the next steps much easier. And it will also make your bag look a lot cleaner. The way to understitch is to just press the seam towards the lining or interior side of the bag, and then sew at about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. If you've never done this before, you want to go slow and you want to make sure that you're pulling these two fabrics apart. That way when you're stitching, you don't get a puffy part over here where the seams are. And then here's how I place my bag, is I just have it like this, and I just kind of fold these parts in so that I can see where I am stitching. So as I sew, I'm going to be pulling here on the interior or lining side, and then here on the exterior side. Sorry, you can't see it. Okay. I'm going to try to keep my hand out of the way so that you can see. Okay, maybe that's a little bit better. And then this part over here is bulky, so you want to be careful. Make sure you're still pulling these two fabrics apart. And then it gets a little bit better on this part because you have more to work with. Part here is a little bulky, so I'm just gonna go over it, and then I'm gonna just backstitch a little bit over there. Right, here is the bag sewn together, and it is understitched here, and here's, you can't really see the understitching because I used black thread. And then what we're going to do is just press this in, and then this is where that understitching helps a lot, because it just helps the lining lay down. So here it is, and then when you press the lining and the exterior together, it just looks much cleaner. You can't see the lining over here from the exterior side because of the understitching. Here we have the bag with the lining on it. I'm going to take some double-sided tape and place it across the top edge. And I'm going to do it on this side. And then we're going to peel off the backing from the double-sided tape. And what we're going to do is turn it inside out again. We're going to do this one more time, but what we want to do this time is close the gap, or close the bag. But first we have to sew the bag together, and then we're going to leave a gap. And I'm just going to press it together. Make sure that the placket is out of the way. And then depending on how thick your fabrics are, if you have stabilizers on it, you want to leave enough space on the gap to be able to turn the bag right side out again. So I'm just going to leave about 5 to 6 inches, but I'm going to sew across here and then here. Make sure the zipper plackets are out of the way when you're sewing. So I'm just going to fold them in, and then I'm going to sew this down at 3/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to stop right about here, back stitch a few times, and then skip a little bit of it, go over down this way, back stitch a few times, and then here is that gap opening. I'm going to go ahead and turn the bag right side out. Don't forget to push out the corners. Here it is. And then we're just going to fold these in so that we can close the gap. And at the same time, I'm pressing these fabrics together because I do have that double-sided tape there. Now what I'm going to do is top stitch all the way across at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, increasing my stitch length for this. And then make sure that your placket is out of the way. So fold it down. My machine did not like this bulky part over here, so I've got to clean it up. Here's what the top stitching looks like. And then over here, we're very close to finishing, so right now we have the straps left to do, and this will be at the very end. And we finished our exterior, we finished our lining, and we finished our bag. Now the next step is to put the bag onto the lining. So again, we're just going to keep this to the side and get our lining and our bag, and then have some double-sided tape. You can use 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch. Here is everything we have left. We've got our strap, the exterior, the lining, and then the bag. Now we're going to put the bag and the lining together, so we'll set this to the side again. Place this over here. And then we're going to need some double-sided tape. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch double-sided tape, but you can also use 1/8. We're going to put 3 double-sided tape here, here, and here. And they have to be put on at specific spots so that your bag can be put on properly. If it's not put on properly, then it might look a little wonky, or it might not sew properly. You will have a hard time sewing it onto the lining if everything is not exact. This is one of the most difficult parts of this bag, if not the most difficult. So I suggest to really take your time on this, have patience, and make sure you are precise with your measurements and your tape and bag placements. I'm going to start by taking my ruler, and it is going to be 1/2 inch from the top and 3/4 inch from the left and right sides. Okay, so I've got my ruler all the way up here. I'm going to start at 1/2 inch right here, and I have 3/4 of an inch in from the edge, and I'm carefully just placing the double-sided tape down. And then I'm going to stop 1 inch from the bottom, so I'm just going to move this down so that I know exactly where the 1 inch mark is, and then I'm going to cut right there, and then just double checking I have everything correct. So that is one, and then I'm going to do this next one here on the right side. Just clip that out of the way, and then do 3/4 from the right. Take my double-sided tape, start 1/2 inch from the top, carefully place it so that my ruler doesn't move. And then stop at 1 inch from the bottom. Right there. There's the second one. And then the bottom one will just be 1 inch from the top, and you want to start and stop where your other double-sided tape placements were. So it should look like this. I'm going to press down the double-sided tape so that they stick to the lining. And then you want to carefully place your bag on top of the lining. Placing the entire bag over the lining at once can be difficult to do, especially if you use really stiff materials or if your vinyls aren't very pliable. So what you want to do is just do this one at a time, and that's going to be just taking one of the double-sided tape backing, peeling it off, and then placing this one side all the way down, pressing it down, making sure it sticks, and then sewing at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then stopping right here at the corner. It's going to be very difficult to go around this corner because of the thick seams unless you used cotton and there is no bulk on your seams. So you can stop right here at the very edge before you get to the seam and make sure that you backstitch. And then after that you can do this other side here and do the same thing. Start from the top, go all the way down right before you get to the seam and stop right there. And then afterwards, for the last thing, line up the bottom and then sew all the way down until you get to the seam. So there will be just a little bit of a gap right here where the corners are, where you won't have stitches, but you can always take some a needle and thread and hand stitch it closed, but it's a very, very small amount and it won't really matter much, and you won't be able to see it when you have the bag put together. Make sure that the thread you're using matches this color here, because you will be able to see the stitches, and if they're a little wonky then they're not going to look very pretty. So try to match the threads on there. I'm going to go ahead and back stitch over here a few times because this is where the weight of the bag will be. And then this is supposed to be a square corner, so try to get it as square as possible. Make sure it's not rounded over here. And then I'm going to backstitch. There's my first one, and then I'm going to do the second one over here. Just making sure that my lining isn't peeking out too much from this bottom edge here. And then line it up with a double-sided tape. This time I'm going to start from this bottom side, since I don't have enough room over here and I don't want to wrinkle it too much. Here's that second one, and now we have to do the bottom. The bottom one is probably the most difficult, so make sure you just take your time getting it right. Okay, as you can see, there is a lot of bulk right here for my bag, so I won't be able to get as close to this seam as I want. I'll probably get as close to maybe 1/4 of an inch to it, but that's okay because this is such a small part, and I'll probably end up hand stitching just a little bit over here anyways, so that's about as close as I'll probably be able to get. I'm just going to move this a little bit forward and then hand crank, see if I can get it closer to that seam. Okay, I was able to get closer to that seam over here, but over here you can see that there's about 1/4 of an inch. There's about 1/4 of an inch that I couldn't get right there. So I'll be sewing that up with a needle and thread. Here's what the bag looks like attached to the lining. Now what we have to do is add the zipper and the zipper end. So I've got my zipper here. Just attach it as you normally would. To add the zipper end, you want to make sure that you've singed the ends over here so it doesn't fray. Fold the corners towards the middle, and then I like to add a little bit of glue. And then take your zipper end and slide it through. Just like that. And then get the screw for it. Make sure it's tight. And then you want to make sure you don't mess with that. Don't pull on it or anything for a little while so that the glue sets in there. Now we're going to add the magnet that will go on this flap right here, and that will connect it to this magnet down here on the bag. So we're going to turn this over to the wrong side, and I'm just going to turn this upside down so I can get to this part better. We need to measure 2 inches from the top, so I'm just going to draw a straight line all the way across. Then we have to find the center, and it is 5 5/8 from the left and right side. So now we have our center right here. I'm going to install the magnet the same way I did before, so starting with the washer, mark out where the prongs will be. And then before I actually cut it, I want to make sure that the placement is correct. Sometimes it will be a little different depending on the materials that you used. So I'm just going to try to line it up. And that looks exactly where it should be. So I'm going to go ahead and cut. Now we are completely finished with the lining part of the bag. Now we have to put these 2 pieces together, and there are 3 ways that you can do that. First is the turning out way, and that's when you place these 2 pieces together and then sew all the way around except for a gap, and then you can turn the bag out through that gap and then close the gap by top stitching all the way around. Or you can do binding, which is when you place these 2 together like this, wrong sides together, sew all the way around, and then bind the bags using a binding that I provided in the pattern. And so you'll have the measurements for that in the pattern if you choose to do that. And then there are also instructions for turning it right side out in the pattern as well. But because I used a bit of a thicker materials for this part of the bag and also Decaville Heavy for both of these, it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to turn out. And I also would just prefer to do edge coating rather than bindings. What I will do is sew these 2 pieces wrong sides together, have a raw edge, and then edge coat it at the end. One thing that I started using recently is this adhesive fabric spray, and it just helps put the 2 pieces together so that it's not so bubbly after you sew them. So I just put down some paper underneath, and then I'm going to spray all over. And then I'm going to place these wrong sides together. I'm going to make sure that I have the correct placement for this so that the top is up here and I don't accidentally put them upside down. And then I'm going to line up all the edges. I have it mostly lined up. Up here is really good, but then down here you can see a little bit of the black from the exterior panel, and that's because when I sewed the bag to the lining, it pulled the lining a little bit towards the middle, so I did lose like probably 1/16 of an inch. So it's not horrible, and I will be able to trim that down later after I sew the bag together. So I'm just going to press these 2 pieces together. And then for the fabric adhesive that I'm using, it says to let it rest a few minutes for the glue to dry completely. So I'm going to get some books and lay them flat on top. Okay, I have a bunch of books on top of this. While I wait for this thing to dry, I'm going to do my straps. So let me just move this out of the way first. I've got my strap right here. And since I'm making it myself, I do have to fold everything and then sew everything so that it is 1 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. The vinyl I'm using is 4 inches wide. That way I can fold them twice so that there are no raw edges. This is the right side of the fabric and this is the wrong side. So I'm just going to mark where the center is, and that would be 2 inches. And then I'll be putting down some double-sided tape across the vinyl all the way down the long edge. Do the same for the other side. I like using double-sided tape more than clips because it helps me get a really clean edge while sewing. Peel off the double-sided tape on one side and then line it up with the middle. And then do the same for the other side. And then fold it again one more time. You can actually use double-sided tape for this also, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. That way it doesn't shift on me as I'm sewing. And I'm just placing it down the middle of one side. And I'm also going to clip it. And then I'm going to sew down the long edges at 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to be making the straps and adding the hardware to it. For this one, I'm going to use these swivel hooks. In the instructions, you just add them directly to the bag, but the instructions on how to put them on the bag and the swivel hooks are basically the same. First, I'm just going to get one of these ends and slide it through the slide adjuster and pull it through over the middle bar. If you're using vinyl for this like I did, you will need like a wide mouth slide adjuster, otherwise it's going to be too small. And then I'm just gonna give it a bit more room like that. And then on the other end of the strap, I'm going to slide it through one of the swivel hooks. And then take the same end and then slide it through the slide adjuster over the middle bar again. Here's what my strap looks like right now, and from here you actually have a few choices on how you can finish up this strap. And one of them is if you have a really cool strap end, or you just want to show off the strap end, you can leave this just like this and then add the strap end here and then loop this around the swivel hook, and you can either hook it like this where you can see the edge of this and then add another slide adjuster here, or you can kind of hide it and do it like that. Or if you want to hide this a little bit more, you can just go ahead and pull this you can just pull it in a little bit more like this. You can stitch it together here or add some rivets, and then this would go over here, and you can either fold it in to hide it, or you can fold it out and place a strap end up here, and then you can either stitch it down or add some rivets. I want to show off the strap ends on mine. I don't have anything fancy, but I do have just plain black strap ends. So what I'm going to do is leave this out and then fold this bottom one over, and I will have it facing out, and then I'll do a strap end here and a strap end here. You can just do rivets if you want, but you can also do a combination of stitches and rivets. And here's the straps. Now we're going to sew around all four edges of the bag to stitch the exterior and lining together. However, I did mess up a little bit on the sides here, and then a little bit on the bottom where my exterior and my lining don't completely match up. So rather than cutting off the excess now, what I'm going to do is sew at 1/4 inch seam allowance instead of the 1/8 inch seam allowance stated on the pattern. And I will still be able to catch everything with the 1/4 inch, and it won't really affect my bag too much. I made sure that the decoration I had on the exterior lining, or on the exterior part of the bag, are within about 3/8 of an inch, so that if I needed that extra space, then I would have it. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew around at 1/4 inch, and then after that I'll clean up the edges and bring it down to 1/8 inch. Here's what the bag looks like after it's sewn all together. So now what I'm going to do is trim off the edges so that I have only 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the stitches to the edge. Now I'm going to edge coat the edges. I'm going to start by doing a base coat, and we'll apply 2 to 3 layers of it and wait 30 minutes in between each coat. My bag is completely finished. I finished edge coating it. I did 2 layers of base coat, 2 layers of color, and 2 layers of top coat. And after each layer, I made sure to sand and made sure that it was dry completely before sanding. So in between the coats, I waited at least 30 minutes, and then for the final color, I did wait overnight because I ran out of time during the night to do the top coat, but it looks super nice and it looks very clean. So let me get this out of the way so you can see the bag. Once you finish your bag, you want to try to get a flat spine over here, and the way you do that is you just turn it upside down and press it down a little bit, and it will just naturally find this edge right here. And when you get that edge, you just pinch it together like this, and then do the same for the other side. And then you'll get this flat edge right here. And then you'll have these a little bit sharper corners so it's not too rounded. For this bag, I noticed that the weight was pulling on this top corner right here. So I added some rivets right there. I made sure it was not on the seam and that it was not going to hit the spine, so I just did it a little bit lower. So if you would like, you can add these rivets after the entire bag is done. That way you can make sure that it doesn't hit any important areas and you're not cutting off any threads. Or you can do it after you've put the lining together, before you put the lining and exterior together. And this is the Austen book bag.